Let me show you one simple application of the use of the four expressions from previous slides. Think of a case where we have a 20-year swap where we could look at, say, the forward curve, all the forward LIBORs, and what we cared about there before was the present value of the floating leg, and I'll put a little 20-year at the bottom of that, so the present value of the floating leg, and we cared about the basis point value of the corresponding fixed leg for the 20-year swap. So we could do a drawing for that one as well. Think of that as the 20-year and a fixed payment for all the years. So think 1 basis point. So that would be the base point value and the value of the floating leg. Now, what if we considered now a 5-year swap? Then we could also easily construct the present value of the floating leg for the 5-year swap, and we could construct the basis point value of the fixed leg of the 5-year swap, just using the same expressions as before. So what we could now care about is what is actually the swap that lives between 5 years and 20 years. We will come back shortly to what is a forward starting swap, but what you could think about here is a 15-year swap starting a 5-year forward in the future. And that would be exposed to all of these forward rates, and it would have a basis point value derived from this segment here. So we would have a front contribution and a back contribution to the 20-year swap, and the back part would be the one corresponding to the forward starting swap. And we could just denote the basis point value of the 15-year 5-year forward for the fixed leg of that by this one, and the floating leg, the PV of the floating leg for the 15-year 5-year forward by this amount. So how do they all relate? Well, we can easily see that the present value of the floating leg of the 15-year 5-year forward starting swap would relate to the present value of the 20-year float leg minus the present value of the 5-year float leg value. And similarly, we could construct the basis point value of the 15-year swap 5-year forward also as a difference between two basis point values of the 20-year and the 5-year again. Now, that's quite interesting, because we know there's a relationship between these two guys and these two guys and the corresponding swap rate. So if we look at the swap rate with the spot start maturing in 20 years and the swap rate with the spot start maturing in 5 years, they would just be the ratio of the value of the floating leg to the basis point value of the fixed leg, and the same for the 5-year. So now we could ask, what is the link then between the forward starting swap starting in 5 years time and maturing 15 years later, and these two guys? How are they related? Well, we could just use the definition of the forward starting swap rate. That would just be the value of the floating leg of the forward starter but relative to the basis point value. Let's try to write it down and be a bit light on the notation. So the float, 15-year, 5-year forward, relative to the basis point value of the fixed leg of the 15-year, 5-year forward. But using these equations, we could write the right-hand side as just a difference of the two floaters, 20-year minus the value of the floater for 5 years relative to the the basis point value of the 20-year minus the basis point value of the 5-year. Does that bring us any closer? Well, we could rewrite it a little bit and say, if we plug in the swap rate, the 20-year swap rate, and multiply by the basis point value of the 20-year relative to the basis point value of the 15-year, 5-year forward, and subtract the 5-year swap rate times the basis point value of the 5-year to the basis point value of the 15-year, 5-year forward. Then I would claim that we could think of the forward starting swap rate as being a weighted difference of the long swap rate, the 20-year and the 5-year. Notice a few things. The basis point value, at least in the absence of discounting, the basis point value of the 20-year would be roughly 20, and the 15-year forward starting, although forward starting would be roughly proportionate to 15. And the same for the 5-year, we would have 5 relative to 15. So we could see that as 1/3 and 4/3. So we are in fact taking 4/3 of the 20-year swap and 1/3 of the 5-year swap and subtracting the two. So that now gives us a relationship between the two spot starting swap rates, and the forward starting swap rate.